Okay, so imagine for a second that the ground beneath your feet, everything you thought was solid, true, and just certain, suddenly started to crack. Well, that's pretty much what it felt like to live in this 17th century. It was a real age of crisis, but also one of incredible ambition, as philosophers went on this quest to rebuild all of human knowledge on a brand new, unshakable foundation: pure reason. This right here was the burning question of the day. You see, for centuries, truth felt pretty secure. It rested on these two massive pillars: the authority of the church and the wisdom of ancient thinkers like Aristotle. But all of a sudden, those pillars started to get shaken to their absolute core. And this created a profound crisis of certainty that just demanded a new answer. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with a crisis that basically ignited this whole firestorm of doubt. Then we'll get into René Descartes and his really radical attempt to build a new foundation for truth. We'll also see how others took his ideas and ran with them to some pretty surprising places. And we'll look at a powerful counterargument from Blaise Pascal. Finally, and this is the most important part for us, we'll connect the dots and see how this 400-year-old conversation still shapes the challenges and, the opportunities we have for ministry right here, right now. The medieval world, you could think of it as this beautiful, ordered cathedral of thought. It was built on this amazing synthesis of the Bible's revelation and Aristotle's philosophy. Everything had its place. But that stable ground was about to experience a massive intellectual earthquake. So the first shock came from the heavens. For more than 1,000 years, everyone just accepted the Ptolemaic view. Earth is right at the center of God's creation. Then along comes Nicholas Copernicus, and he proposes this startling new idea. Nope, the sun is the center, and the Earth, well, it's just another planet. Now, this wasn't just some minor astronomical tweak. This was a philosophical demotion for all of humanity. And Copernicus wasn't just a one-off. He basically lit a fuse. Soon you had Johannes Kepler figuring out these elegant mathematical laws that govern the planets. Then Galileo Galilei, with his brand new telescope, brings back stunning evidence. He saw moons orbiting Jupiter that just shattered the old model. A whole new way of knowing was being born, one that was based on observation and math. And frankly, it didn't need to ask for permission from tradition. So, while science was challenging the world from the outside, an old idea popped back up to challenge it from within: radical skepticism. This philosophy, inspired by an ancient Greek thinker named Pyrrho, asked a devastating question. What if our senses are constantly fooling us? I mean, a stick in water looks bent, right? A tower in the distance looks tiny. If we can't fully trust our senses or even our own reasoning, where in the world could we possibly find truth? Into this complete chaos of doubt steps René Descartes. Now, Descartes was a brilliant mathematician, and he was absolutely determined to give the skeptics an answer. He wanted to tear down the old, crumbling house of knowledge and rebuild it from scratch on a foundation so solid, so certain, that no doubt could ever shake it again. His approach was basically a philosophical demolition project. He decided to doubt everything, systematically. Anything that had even the slightest possibility of being false had to go. What his senses told him, what his teachers taught him, even the certainty of mathematics. He was going to tear it all down until he found one single belief that was absolutely impossible to doubt. And right in the middle of all this doubt, Descartes has this incredible breakthrough. He realizes that the very act of doubting proved one thing for certain. He, the person doing the doubting, must exist. Cogito ergo sum. I am thinking, therefore I exist. This became his solid ground. This was the unmovable point from which he was going to rebuild the entire world of knowledge. Okay, so starting from the certainty of his own existence, Descartes takes his next step. He reasons that in his mind, he has this idea of a perfect being, God. An idea like that, he argued, couldn't possibly come from his own imperfect mind. No, it must have been placed there by a truly perfect being. And a perfect God, well, by definition, a perfect God would not be a deceiver. And because of that, God guarantees that our clear and distinct ideas about the world are actually true. Descartes' project was, well, it was revolutionary. It completely opened the floodgates. A whole new generation of rationalist philosophers took the tools he created, but as they started building their own systems, they ended up with very different and often pretty startling conclusions about God and the universe. Just look at the incredible diversity here. It's amazing. Starting from the exact same place, reason alone, these thinkers landed in completely different worlds.
Descartes, he found a God who would seem familiar to Christians, a perfect creator separate from his creation. But then you have Baruch Spinoza, whose logic led him straight to pantheism, the idea that God and nature are the same thing, a single, infinite substance that is everything. And then there's Gottfried Leibniz, who pictured God as this divine architect who logically chose to create this world because it was the best of all possible worlds. But, as you can imagine, not everyone was convinced that pure reason was the right path. One of the most powerful critiques came from a contemporary of these rationalists, a scientific genius in his own right named Blaise Pascal. He saw a profound danger in their project and offered a radically different way forward. This incredibly powerful statement comes from a note Pascal wrote after a profound spiritual experience, a note he actually sewed into his coat to carry with him always. It perfectly captures his main point. There is a huge difference between the abstract God of the philosophers, a neat logical concept, and the living, personal God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob revealed in the scriptures. St. Pascal looked at humanity, and he saw that these philosophical systems, they just failed to address our real situation. He saw this deep-seated boredom, anxiety, and emptiness that we are constantly trying to escape through all kinds of diversions. He argued that reason was just powerless to heal this brokenness or to grasp the mystery of a God who enters into our suffering. For that, he said, we don't need a proof. We need a mediator. Now, Pascal wasn't anti-reason. I mean, the man was a brilliant scientist. But he argued that reason has its limits. Faith for him wasn't some failure of reason. No, it was a different, more profound way of knowing. As he famously put it, it's God perceived by the heart, not by the reason. And he even turned the tables on the skeptics using their own favorite tool, logic. His famous wager basically argues that we are all forced to bet our lives on whether God exists or not. You can't just sit this one out, you have to play. And when you look at the potential outcomes, infinite gain versus infinite loss, Pascal said the only truly rational choice is to bet on God. So why does any of this matter? Why does a debate between 17th century European philosophers matter to a pastor, a theologian, or a Christian worker in Nigeria today? Well, it matters because the world they built is the world we now live in. The questions they raised and the answers they gave have profoundly shaped the very intellectual and cultural air that we, and all the people we minister to, breathe every single day. You see, this era created what's often called the turn to the self. When Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," he put the individual mind right at the center of the universe. He made it the ultimate judge of truth, placing it above tradition, community, even revelation. That is the seed of modern individualism. It set the stage for our ongoing debates about faith versus reason, and it created the intellectual permission for a world understood with no reference to God at all. Understanding this history, it's not just some academic exercise. It's a vital tool for ministry. It helps us hear the hidden assumptions and the deep questions that people carry with them, often without even realizing it. It equips us to move beyond debating an abstract God of the philosophers and to introduce them, just like Pascal tried to do, to the living reality of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a God who is not a conclusion of logic, but a father to be known by the heart. And that is our task in this age of reason.